Hello again. This is the last video for Chapter 7, dealing with the law of cosines. So, in the last video did the law of sines. What we're talking about is when you don't have a right triangle and you're trying to figure out all the angle measurements and all the side lengths. So if you don't have a right triangle, you can't use those sine, cosine, and tangent ratios. The law of cosines that we'll be talking about here, it's kind of like a last-ditch effort. If you don't have enough information to use the law of sines, which is relatively easy to solve, it's just a cross multiplying. If you don't have enough information to use the law of sines, the last thing you can use is the law of cosines, and that will always work if you don't have anything else. So, the law of cosines, we're still dealing with a generic triangle. It's not a right triangle, it's a scalene triangle. You've got your three angles, A, B, and C. You've got the sides across from them, little a, little b, and little c. So, the law of cosines, it is an equation. Now, there's three different equations. Which one you use depends on what information you know and which information you're trying to find. But if you look very carefully at these three equations, there is a very distinct pattern. Okay? This first equation starts with side A, ends with the cosine of angle A. Side B ends with cosine of B. Starts with side C, ends with cosine of C. Okay, there's that pattern. The other pattern is, going back to the first equation, it starts with side A, but all the other sides, all the other parts of the equation is dealing with the other two sides, B and C, B and C. Same thing. Second equation, you start with B, A, C, A, C. You're using the other sides. There is a very, very distinct pattern. So do you need to memorize all three? No. You need to know the pattern, but you don't need to memorize all three equations. They're all the same. All right. So this is the law of cosines equation. So to use it, all right, and actually I'm going to back up a second. So which one do you use? What do you start with? The general rule is always find the largest angle first. So some of you are probably asking, but Mr. Johnson, how do we know which one's the largest angle? That's across from the longest side, always. Okay, so to solve this right triangle, we're going to find angle C first. So if we're going to find angle C first, that means we need to start with side C. So we're going to go 14 squared will equal the other two sides squared, added up, minus 2 times the product of the other two sides, multiplied by the cosine of the angle opposite the side we started with. Okay, our variable is right there, angle C. Now, there's a very common mistake, but notice, this is a multiplication. 2 times 9 times 12 times the cosine of C. So what we're going to do is solve. All right, I got 14 squared. I'm going to get this term by itself first. So that means I'm going to subtract 9 squared and I'm going to subtract 12 squared from both sides. That changes the equal sign to be here. What I'm left with is a negative 2 times 9 times 12 times the cosine of angle C. All right, I'm pretty good at math, but I can't do those numbers all that well. So, calculator's back out. I'm working, here we go. All right, 14 squared minus 9 squared minus 12 squared. I'm just going to get that answer. Negative 29. That equals. Now I want to know what this multiplication is right here. So, negative 2 times 9 times 12. That is a negative 216 times the cosine of angle C. All right, we are trying to find the angle measurement for C. This is a multiplication. In order to solve for angle C, we need to get this cosine of angle C by itself. Because that's a multiplication, we need to divide by a negative 216 on both sides. So those will cancel out, leaving us with the cosine of angle C, 29. They're both negative, so the negatives will cancel out. So 29 divided by 216, that gives me 0.1342. We got a whole bunch of decimals. Now that we got the cosine of angle C equal to a number, to solve for angle C, I don't know why that just popped up. To solve for angle C, we're going to do the inverse cosine of this number that we just got. And so we go to secondary cosine, that is the inverse, and I'm just going to use the last answer. There's angle C. So angle C equals, and we'll go to the hundredths place, so 82.28 degrees. Okay, now that's dealing with law of cosines. In any triangle, you will never have to do law of cosines more than once. The reason is, we know this angle now, 82.28 degrees. Okay, the reason we use law of cosines is because we didn't have enough information to use law of sines. Now that we've found this extra piece of information using law of cosines, now we got enough to use law of sines. Oops, I have to write the word law. Law of sines is the sine of an angle divided by its opposite side to equal the sine of another angle, I'll go with A, divided by its opposite side, which is 12. And so now we can solve for angle A, just like we did in the last video. So let me bring the calculator back up. We're just going to do some cross multiplying. Really, all we need to do is multiply both sides by 12. That will give me the sine of A. So, I have 12 multiplied by the sine of, and I got that last answer there, so I'm just going to use it again. The sine of the 82, then that's being divided by 14. Notice how I'm doing these in just little chunks of calculations. I'm not trying to enter the whole thing in all at once. That's where mistakes are made. So the sine of angle A is 0.84938. I want to know the measurement of angle A. So now I do the inverse sine of that number we just found. And so secondary sine, secondary that last answer, the 0.849, there is angle A. 58.14 degrees. Now that I got angle angle C and angle A, angle B is just 180 minus the other two. Now we know all three sides, we know all the angles. Okay, that is the law of cosines. Again, always start by finding the largest angle first. If you're given all three sides, find the largest angle first. You're only going to have to do the law of cosines once for a given triangle. Once you do the law of cosines to find that other piece of information, you have enough to use the law of sines, and you can use that because it's easier to algebraically to solve compared to the law of cosines. That is all. Have a good night.